I just finished Life is Strange Double Exposure. I spent all day playing it. I've had about an hour of sleep, and I wrote all this on the spot. So forgive me if it's a little rushed. Double Exposure is an improvement from the previous game, True Colors, but still isn't very good. Deck 9 Games once again gets almost everything wrong about what made the first game good. It gets lost in the superficial elements of Life is Strange, and over elaborates on the aspects of the series that no one really played the game for: the powers, the lore, the mystery. Deck 9 really thinks people play these games for the bisexual murder mystery. Most of these are just excuses to have Max and Chloe do stuff and have character drama. If Deck 9 is getting the point of these games wrong, then what is the point of Life is Strange? What makes Life is Strange good? What are these games about at their core? For this, I'm only going by Life is Strange 1 and 2, as those were the games created by Don't Nod, the original French developers. At its core, Life is Strange is a relationship simulator about a toxic but loving relationship between two people that is tested by life. That's it. Everything else is secondary. You play the role of the codependent who has all the power in the relationship, yet is still incredibly passive. Max can control time and space, yet still lets Chloe boss her around. Sean is older and smarter than Daniel, but Daniel has telekinetic powers and is brash and emotional. The player goes on a week-long date with Chloe where you decide how much you give in to her demands, follow her orders, protect her, etc. Every major decision in the game is usually a choice between Chloe and the town, your responsibility to the town versus your freedom and loyalty to Chloe. While in the second game it's a road trip and you are raising Daniel, both games have a final choice with two endings. The second game technically has four endings, but that's because Daniel also gets to choose an ending, depending on how you've treated him and what you've taught him, and you get those other two endings if Daniel disagrees with your final choice. Most of these games are about your relationship with a semi-abusive person. Both games have a very similar plot and ending. The main character gets superpowers after a traumatic experience with gun violence, then makes an incredibly stupid and selfish choice, such as saving Chloe or running from the cops. It's a choice for someone else. It provides a lot of interesting commentary on autonomy and rights. Obviously, this has disastrous consequences that last the entire game, and the final choice of the game asks you if you want to continue making this choice, accepting the consequences, which is the sacrifice Arcadia Bay, and the keep going choice, or if the player wants to renege on their decision and stop, also accepting the consequences, but in a different way, such as sacrifice Chloe or surrender. Both games technically have the same ending, keep going or surrender. Both games are about our heroes trying to avoid consequences until the very end. Both endings emphasize the choice of choosing society or choosing your relationship with that person. The finale of Life is Strange is interesting to me because it's one long cosmic lesbian breakup, and the game asks, do you break up with Chloe or do you try again with this toxic relationship? That is what Life is Strange is about. Not hipster music, not vibes, not mysteries. It's about a relationship between two people that's tested by life.
And there also seems to be a theme in the background about environmentalism that doesn't really seem to be mentioned in a lot of reviews.
Double Exposure completely fails here, like True Colors did, by not having a main relationship. People might say Steph from True Colors, but she isn't a co-protagonist in the same way Chloe and Daniel are. Max is entirely on her own in this game. This doesn't work as Max is a character that works best as a pair, as she plays the passive, low-energy character to a more assertive type. This game feels remarkably shorter and emptier than the first game. The only location is the school campus, and there is such a low amount of named characters, and it's very distracting. One improvement over True Colors is that a lot of the cast are assholes again, which tie in nicely to the themes of the first game. It makes the characters more dynamic and less boring. Something I find kinda unique is that so many characters in this game seem to specifically be bi or have some sort of fluid sexuality. I romanced Vin in my playthrough, and then randomly found him dating Reggie in my next one. It was very funny. There was a lot of homoeroticism in this game that just feels uncharacteristically weird, as these games are very Yuri-coded. The game also makes the same mistake True Colors made by taking place in a clean, sanitized liberal utopia, despite the fact that the Life is Strange world is a crapsack hellhole full of drugs, violence, racism, rape, and murder, where people like Frank, Jefferson, and the Prescotts run wild. This game does a better job than True Colors at having more dramatic topics and has a lot more edge, but it's still not enough, and definitely doesn't compare to the first game. It treads similar topics, but then does them even weaker than the original. For example, Maya commits suicide before the game, off-screen, because Lucas plagiarized her work. This is terrible, but is so much weaker than Kate being drugged, filmed being sexually assaulted, then being kidnapped, photographed, and then afterwards being gaslit and victim blamed and laughed at by the entire school, then jumping off the school roof in front of Max, on screen, after actually interacting with her throughout the game. That is a million times heavier than whatever Maya did, off-screen, years ago. And I also find it silly when Moses cries racism during the game, despite being the main victim's best friend and one of the last people to see her during her death, and then immediately taking an item she had on her at the crime scene. Like, of course you were a suspect, and Max becomes one too anyway. The game ignores the actual racism in the game, though. None of the black characters can be romanced, and Max didn't even accuse Diamond of phone theft. And nothing even happens. Why does the game just ignore this? A white woman just accused a black woman of theft. I also still find it funny that they made Charlotte the angry one in True Colors. Making the game a mystery was a bad idea. Murder mysteries are not a staple of the franchise. Rachel's disappearance was just an excuse for Max and Chloe to do crazy things like break into the school or Frank's RV without just being random hijinks. It helps tie together the vignettes of the story. Whatever answer the mystery had didn't really even matter. Same with the mystery of finding Karen in the second game. just an excuse for more family drama and to provide another perspective on Sean running away from his responsibilities. Double Exposure puts a lot of emphasis on the thing no one played the original game for. Life is Strange is about the ride, not some satisfying conclusion of a mystery. 90% of the first 2 chapters are dedicated to the actual literal mystery. There are no vignettes, no real smaller stories, it's all just Max collecting evidence. One nice touch is that Max has learned her lesson from the first game and isn't being fake or trying to be popular anymore. Her powers are just business this time. People talk about how this Max is written well, but I still don't really like it. I think it's a shallow interpretation. All they got from the first game was that Max was adorable, but now she's confident. This Max is always crying about PTSD though. But if you played the first game, you'd know that Max is fucking psycho. She threatens David, she drops paint on Victoria no matter what choice the player makes, and depending on how she's played, she can be borderline sociopathic. She barely reacts when Frank gets shot. She also barely reacts to getting kidnapped from Jefferson. She is so obsessed with Chloe that everything else seems to be just background distraction to her. Most of Max's empathy is completely manipulative. And she's obsessed with Chloe. She's only known her for a week and she destroys her entire life over her. Having Max cry about how traumatized she is felt a bit weird when she had no problem pulling a gun on Frank one day after meeting Chloe again. If you see the game's plot from any other perspective, you'll know that Max comes off as totally unhinged. By the middle of the game, Double Exposure's plot copies the first game and turns into a psychodrama akin to Gone Girl, or that really shitty episode of Stranger Things, where it turns out Sophie's on a shape-shifting revenge tour against her former friends. I like the scene where Max is like, "You shouldn't have brought Lucas's kid into this." And I'm like, "Max, shut up. You've killed thousands of people." The people, shut up. Stop moralizing. There was so much environmental storytelling in the Don't Nod games that is lacking so substantially in this one. The audience has nothing to work with involving Sophie and her mother's relationship. The power is interesting, but not much is done with it. It reminds you of Chrono Trigger, where the first game is about time travel, and then a crappier sequel was released years later that is almost totally unrelated to the first game, purposely ruins the ending of the characters from the first game, and deals with interdimensional travel. This game's not winning any points for originality. I guess the more serious art style than the change in powers could be a metaphor for Max growing up, but still, I absolutely hate the way everything looks now, especially her journal, and all the Chloe dialogue feels so off. It almost feels like stereotypical, like it's hard to explain. Nothing in the text felt real from anyone. Everything feels incredibly stiff. There aren't even timestamps on the text anymore. They couldn't even give Max's parents different chats. And did anyone forget that in the second game, it's mentioned that Victoria still got kidnapped in the Sacrifice Arcadia Bay timeline? I thought a reference to her PTSD would be in one of her texts, like her letter to David in the second game, but nope. It absolutely feels like Deck 9 wanted to make a different game, and then Square Enix came and did a bunch of executive meddling, forcibly adding Max even when it didn't make any sense. And even then, this game feels much more like a Sacrifice Chloe ending. It makes much more sense to me in this continuity, as Max is alone and has found her place in society, just like the ending implied she would. Shoehorning the other ending into this game was such a bad idea. The text between Max and Chloe and their breakup are just absurd. I'm glad they broke up, in my opinion, as neither ending should really be rewarded, as the first Life is Strange game is a modern tragedy. So, no happy endings, but the way in which they broke up was so stupid. There's one line that goes like, "Max, I'm worried you'll rewind and undo our fighting," and like what? It would make more sense if Chloe was mad that Max, I don't know, killed her mom and everyone in town had resentment towards that. But nope, it's just, "I'm paranoid about you rewinding," like, which Chloe does show concern about in the game, but never to the point of worrying. It's always done as a joke. And shoehorning Caden Warren's text into the nightmare was so eye-rolling. Like, I'm glad no shippers were rewarded in this game, but like, come on, this sucked. And for a mystery, was anything really solved? Like, who attacked Reggie? Is Alderman just dead? What even happened here? Did Max jump into that storm? Like, what the hell? How did that work? What caused the other storm? What even was Abraxas? Was that important? What's happening? And the worst part about this game is that it devolves into X-Men. Sophie goes full Darth Vader and tells Max to come to the dark side. That's the final choice of the game. Come to the dark side for no reason at all. The town was a lot healthier and nicer than in the first game, and Max has no real reason to get revenge on the normies who hurt her. This would have made much... And you know, it's funny, because this would have made much more sense of, like, Sean or Daniel. The only answer is to obviously refuse this incredibly stupid option that lacks proper narrative theming and closure. Hell, the entire school helps Max take Lucas down Disney Channel style, which is so lame. But also shows that Max has a community here. Why would Max join Sophie at all? All the choices were nonsensical and were so underwhelming. The choices in this game are really weird. In the first Life is Strange game, most of the choices were based on Max's indecision, and were usually polar opposite choices, or were a case of action versus inaction. And with every choice in the game is either a side with Chloe or side with the town option, or a lesson on indecision, or it's a choice that fleshes out the RPG elements of Max's character, like kissing Warren or being mean to Victoria. But some of the choices in Double Exposure are so abstract and incredibly specific that they don't really have the same idea of causality that the first game has. Answer her questions or call her bluff? Like, what? What happened to shoot and don't shoot? Answer or don't answer? Like, the simpler, the better. None of these choices mean anything, obviously, and they can't because we're solving a linear mystery, and the story can't veer off course at all. One thing they get right is that most of the choices change how the characters feel about you. But even then, this is all culminated with the Deck 9 epilogue, where everyone stands there one by one, stating the main idea of their relationship with Max, and the end. What this game needed was just something simple like, do I steal the money or not? Not do I take a USB out of the garbage? And also, the ending is crap. The game literally ends on a Marvel-esque Avengers assembly, and I can't. Like, who thought this was a good idea? And everyone learns about the supernatural? Max acts like this is crazy, but Daniel was showing his powers to everyone in the second game, so I don't really understand the hype. But you're telling me that in 2024, no one was able to film this event? The Nightmare was my favorite part of the first game, and I found this one to be so boring. It doesn't even make any thematic sense. I didn't completely hate the plot. The idea of Max moving on from her past was really nice, and it was actually refreshing to not see a bunch of references to the first game. Max was having her Majora's Mask side story, and it was pretty neat for what it was. The game pretty much gives her a happy ending where she doesn't have to sacrifice the town or her friend. It totally cheapens the end of the first game, but if you take the story as a more standalone thing, it's a nice little ending for Max, allowing her to actually be a hero. This game does not even light a candle to the depths of the first game. I saw a review that gave it a 9, and I absolutely do not believe for a second that that was genuine. This game is absolutely a 4 or 5, and that's okay. The game misses the main point of Life is Strange, but it's not horrible. But it's absolutely, in no words, in no way, a 9. Yeah, you should still buy it. You should still play it, but just know that it is absolutely not a 9. So if Deck 9 is going to make a new Life is Strange game, please remember this. Make the game about a toxic relationship between two people, where they love each other, but they are just so messed up. And second, bring back the old art style. More locations, like stop the sitcom crap where there's like a single bar where everyone hangs out. The first game had 2 whales, but even then, that wasn't as overused as the Black Lantern. And the hub location doesn't have to be a bar. Please stop with the bars. No one wants a bar, please. And also, where's the tragedy? Where's the comedy? Where's the life part, or the strange part? I always think about William's death and how that tragedy covers the entire game, but nothing like that even comes close. So I don't hate this game, and I think you should still buy it, but it was disappointing.